we noticed that we lost that ceiling price for a couple days based on one guy with big bags selling, right? And it took more time than I was kind of anticipating to find that ceiling price again. And it happened specifically because of what I've been saying this whole time, is that if it loses that ceiling price, then essentially we're going to see the new supply of Icosa being put on the market come to a near halt until it finds that ceiling price again, right? Because why would somebody go and create an HSI and sell it to the contract to get Icosa at a loss when they could have just bought it cheaper on the market, right? And when you're selling your HSI to the contract and you're minting new Icosa, that is inflation, right? Those are new coins coming into the ecosystem, at least temporarily before it sticks, right? But it still counts as inflation. So what I'm saying is that if the inflation comes to a grinding halt, and as long as you have just a little bit more buys than sells, it will slowly creep its way back up to that ceiling price. But there's no guarantee that it will do that, because you're assuming you're getting more buys than sells in that process. And I think that if one large, he wasn't even that large of a bag that was selling, in my opinion. But if one guy can come through and knock the price down from the ceiling like that for several days, not several hours, several days, then that means that when we see the auctions play, and we see a lot of these guys who are in organizations now who may or may not go in and buy a bunch of these cheap HSIs and immediately sell it back to the contract to get Icosa to immediately sell for USDC, that could potentially really wreck that ceiling price for a minute. And what I was trying to, the point I was trying to get across is, when we're dealing with staking and earning yield, you got to think about tax, you got to think about delayed gratification, you got to think about why you staked in the first place. And I was also moved on to the second point, which is I felt that when I first saw the early end stake penalties of the Icosa Hedron pools, I originally thought that they were more than fair and thought it was like kind of generous. I have now changed my tune on that, and I believe they are very harsh in reality, just because yes, it's linear, correct, but it's hitting both your principal and your yield equally. What I don't want to see people doing is I don't want to see people early end staking, because we see a dip, potentially a harsh dip in the Icosa price around Hedron auction day. And specifically day 3, which would be November 16th through potentially however long it takes to recover. And we may not see the downward pressure of recycling HSIs and selling the Icosa for USDC relieve itself anytime soon. So
yeah, right on. Sounds like an opportunity if you want to stake more Icosa. But yeah, there's a certain fear there with Icosa. Like, what else is it propped up with other than people providing liquidity to it?
I believe that was like 80,000 Icosa that was sold caused for that dip to happen. So it wasn't like an insignificant amount either, considering that like the liquid supply, that's like 10% of the liquid supply.
I think it might have been 145,000.
Yeah, I think it happened in a couple of orders altogether, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think it was an emotional thing. Like somebody got pissed off. There was something that happened, and the guy dumped not only his Icosa but other stuff too, and so it kind of affected a couple of pairs. Well, that's the first time I've ever seen that. How they got that Icosa was from their Maxi bag, and then they took that and then they put it into Deci. So I guess potentially they could be trying to maximize their Maxi in like a full circle attempt.
Let's pretend for a second we're just trying to prepare for the worst and hope for the best sort of scenario. So this is where we're preparing for the worst. I'll let somebody else answer this. What is the current value of the HSIs that are going to hit the market on day 1, on the first auction day?
A few $1 million.
Let's say that the Icosa price is roughly $1, right? When the sell-off happened. So if it's 145,000 Icosa, then you can call it $145,000, right? And it put a 2-day kind of wrinkle in the Icosa price. And now you're looking at millions of dollars coming out on the first auction day. And then you're looking at several hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or no, the next day is over $1 million. And then after that, several hundreds of thousands of dollars with the HSIs coming through every day for a while. So we don't know exactly what people are going to do with their HSIs that they win. We have no idea. But if we're playing the thought experiment of, plan for the worst, I think we could very well see a dip in the Icosa price that may last longer than would make any of us comfortable.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Maverick. It seems like a good buying opportunity. Like this little dip that you're showing here, by the time it was halfway back up to price again, it was like, I think a potential was like 80 cents or something like that. People were very disappointed in themselves that they missed the dip.
I didn't realize that it was actually multiple days that dip lasted.
When you look at the volume, a couple of those pairs, you can tell that it's going to take a little bit of time, right? With the confidence, people just generalize confidence that they have. And the fact that there's only like 20 interactions with the contract, it's going to take a little bit of time. But what I noticed noticed is there was like, when that dip happened, like what Gifford had pointed out, that the activity pretty much came to a screeching halt, and there was no sells. There was any buys that would happen after that were significant to the price, pushing it back up. Those 2 days were kind of like a referencing point to us as far as how the supply dynamics are being handled. The fact that it went right back up to its premium again is confident to me, regardless that it took 2 days. It's fine. That was 2 days of opportunities that were presented to the community, in my opinion, and now that opportunity is gone. So if you're paying attention to what Gifford's saying, that you might actually have an opportunity that you can prepare for, and you only have about 30 to 40 days to do that, which may give you about four to six paychecks to prepare for an opportunity that may present itself. It may not, but there's high likelihood that it could. I guess we'll just have to see.
Dude, I called it, and I called the mechanics about how and why it would happen that way. And I specifically said also what you just said, which was if we see a big dip, my only fear or my only like foreseeing, like me foreseeing some market action will be on the auction day, that we will see a dip in a really good opportunity for those who really want to get an Icosa and stake that. And hopefully you've got enough to stake it at, whale status. Like that will be the opportunity. You want dry powder to buy Icosa on the dip. And that's something that nobody else is talking about. Everybody else is talking about either A, building up their Hedron bag to buy these HSIs, or B, just holding their Hedron bags and staking them and just allowing the burning of the Hedron to make their Hedron more rare. But nobody's talking about the dip that we're going to see during the auction days, maybe.
Yeah. Would you agree that as long as we're sitting at the ceiling price for arbitrary means, that it is always pretty much incentivizing one group, and those are hexagons, right, to be able to get into Icosa? The liquidity suggests such a thing, and their availability to use hex to make HSIs to get the Icosa with no slippage at all really does kind of incentivize just hexagons to get into Icosa. However, when the dip goes down, it no longer incentivizes anybody specifically as like a group of people specifically. However, at that point in time, it is incentivizing new people who are not hexagons to be able to take advantage, like you just said, to get into Icosa, and then they have a chance against
Otherwise,
that.
the only opportunity would be hex dipping Icosa follows, right?
Yeah,
But that's not really an opportunity, though.
Still, yeah, no, an opportunity.
That's doing it.
Yeah.
It's doing what it's supposed to do in that scenario.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is opportunity if you want just Icosa or hex. I mean, they're dipping, right?
yeah, but the arbitrary opportunity really is if Icosa dips and hex stays, because then the ceiling price stays, and then we can all sit there and go, okay, how many days is this going to take to get back, right? And as we have more supply that's available and more people that are providing liquidity, so that way you don't have such a high volatile to the downside or to the upside type of momentum, and more people actually have Icosa in their hands, then this type of volatile stuff will happen. They'll still happen, but it won't be so violent, right? Or they'll have to do a hell of a lot more damage. They'll have to try a hell of a lot harder to actually cause for this really volatile movement to happen when liquidity providers are providing more liquidity at that time. But nobody has any, so nobody really can provide like a whole shit ton of anything to do anything with. So everything's really kind of volatile right now. And as we go on, there's like two sides of that coin. More people have Icosa in their pockets to be more volatile, and people also have the availability of providing liquidity to reduce volatility. So it could go either way. And usually you kind of have a mixture of all of that happening. So you still kind of see the same result of what we currently see today, of people still doing the same shit that they normally would do, but now there's just more people, and more people have more of the asset. So it just looks more crazy, more volume, more stuff.
And that's just adding to what you're saying there. The simple dynamic of burning the Icosa when you stake it is going to add volatility to Icosa, period. And I don't even really think that we will see a scenario where there's enough liquidity to quote unquote stabilize the price. I think this is baked in. This is what I'm calling for. I think this is baked in. I think getting opportunities like this will be a regular occurrence where some people see it as opportunities and other people see it as volatility. This is going to be an ongoing thing, because why would you create a liquidity pair and earn a fraction of the fees that you would staking the Icosa, right? Especially with the mentality that we have is kind of being in this hexagon community. Like I've done the liquidity pairings because it's actually a really good deal. Because it tracks the ceiling price, or so far it's been tracking so well. Like you get paid pretty good, but nothing compared to once these auctions hit. Like you're gonna feel real dumb if you're not staked when this happens.
I think that you're right in those respects, right? Like obviously if you can make a higher APY off of just utilizing the staking protocol, then you would just go ahead and do that as opposed to providing liquidity. However, let's say that like I staked for 365 days, and in the end result of that 365 days, I've got 4 million Icosa Icosa, right? Let's imagine that I take that 4 million Icosa and I go to actually put it into the thing, and I realize that I suck the majority of the points out, and then it's going to disincentivize people from continuing to do that in that staking pool. And let's say that on top of it, I'm already staked again, right? Like I already have my staking protocols going. I already have good things going the way that it is. And now I have an exorbitant amount of extra assets. Me specifically. There's going to be people out there that are like that, right? They will go provide liquidity, regardless of the fact that they could go somewhere else and get more APY and all these other things. But for the longevity of the project, they will go provide liquidity.
Yeah, one-sided. Like, what's the point of doing it any other way than one-sided liquidity?
I think it depends on the pair that you go into.
Well,
If you're going stables, then yeah, probably.
No, you would have to do Hex Icosa. You'd have to do a one-sided, and you would have to just try to grab. You start at the ceiling price, and you want to grab anything above that, essentially,
well,
right?
Especially if you know that the B shares, not the B shares, especially if you know that the share rate is about to jump up, and you put your liquidity at
New
I guess,
share rate.
the lowest of the range, and then allow for your range to appropriate to the newer top of the range, so you can liquidity provide in that range for a long period of time. The only thing is with liquidity providing right now is there's really not enough people that are buying and selling to really cause for a lot of 24-hour volume to go across some of those pairs, where it really is incentivizing people with it, watering their mouths to get too involved with it so much. However, like providing liquidity on the Hex Icosa pair, at least at this point, even with that dip that fell out of the parabola, out of the range of what you would consider a stable area, and then right back up again, you would have went into a technical capability of available impermanent loss for those 1.5 days. But for the, how many days has Icosa been going now? 40, 50 days, something like that. You would have had 2 points in time in the entirety of all of your liquidity providing where you would have had incurred a position where you would have had to deal with impermanent loss if you knew what was going on when you provided those things. 2 points in time, that's it. I could tell you that providing liquidity with almost all other pairs within 1 week, you are constantly worried about that happening. We're talking 40, 50 fucking days here with 2 times of that happening. Like, I'm really surprised that we don't have more people that are just slamming and stacking up onto that and trying to extract as much hex as they possibly can already. I think that maybe that might happen eventually, like later on down the road. But just for right now, everybody wants Icosa, and that just seems to be the sentiment of it. They're not really going the other ways with the Icosa yet.
Godwell will go that way as soon as his Hedron stake is served.
He has one of the biggest opportunities to be able to do that, to create more health in the ecosystem as far as liquidity is concerned, yes.
I don't think he will.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't have to. He could just sit there and hold on to his shit like he does everything else.
Yeah, how many transactions processed over the last, let's just give it 2 years. See, and I say that, and I have to argue with myself, because Hexecutioner knows me fairly well at this point. I like to argue with myself a lot. I say that, but then at the same point in time, like the staking mechanism of being able to stake your coins and not having to unstake them, like you can just leave them there, might appeal him greatly.
It's more about protecting your wealth because you don't need to, and that's just what providing liquidity on Icosa would do for him.
And I'm down for that. Like, if he goes his 365 days and then does end his stake and the 20% bonus gets paid out to the Watsa pool, like, people are already really super excited about that. And I posed kind of that same mentality of thought, Gifford, that you just did about, well, what if he doesn't end his stake? What if he lets that monster of a stake go for 3, 4, 5 years and then he ends the stake with that 20% bonus? God, you would just be kicking yourself square in the nuts for getting rid of your Watsas within that period of time. Like, it's almost like a guaranteed, this is how long you hold it until God Whale moves. Like, at least all of your Watsas. Yep. Don't do anything with not a damn single one of them until you see him move. And then when he goes ahead and moves out of that staking pool, then I see like a fuck ton of Watsas being maybe potentially burned at that point in time. Yeah, on top of just the November liquidations with the yield that's coming in, and it's going to be like a heightened, like constant yield. Some people aren't going to be paying attention to that either. They're just going to see like they get whopped across the head with this brand new high yield, and they're probably going to burn their Watsas too, not realizing that higher yield is going to continue to keep happening over and over and over and over and over again for a long period of time until all of the HSIs are gone. And it could never be gone because we have these arbitrary events. It could cause for more HSIs to get dumped in where we're waiting for more 90-day periods.
What do you guys think the odds are if we see some poor auction activity towards the end of the bootstrap period? What do you think the odds are that a entity like, say, the Hedron deployer wouldn't step up and insert another 360-day period of yield with X amount of Hedron?
I think that it's highly likely because it's already done it, right? There's already a ratio of success on that front. It's already done. Another thing that I wanted to say real quick is, so at the beginning of Hedron, within the first 100 days of the launch phase, there were certain periods periods of time where the SA had just went in benevolent functioned like a trillion Hedron out of nowhere, right? Which we didn't know why. It eventually ended up being relevant later.
Why would he burn, which would indicate a boost in yield just the following day, over inserting said Hedron as a yield bootstrapped over another 360 days? Why
You're
do
saying-
one day over 360?
Why would he use the benevolent function that's hidden underneath the code in the Hedron code over using the seed liquidity function that's hidden in the Icosa function?
Well, first of all, neither one of them hidden. I found them quite easily. Yes.
Well, I mean, only hidden in the respectful understanding that it's not on the front end. That if you want to write contract code on any ERC20 contract, then you can go to etherscan.io and you can write code right there and apply anything, any function that contract can do. You can do it right there without needing a front end. And that's where you do those things without needing a front end. I mean, you have to do those things there regardless. It's the only place you can do those things. So, I mean, that's kind of why I say hidden function, because most people don't even know how to revoke their damn permissions on Etherscan anyway. So they don't go look at that stuff. They don't even know.
Would it be a good play for me to mint now, like all of them basically, and take that Hedron and have that work for me basically? Because it's honestly it's a nice chunk of change, right? That I can stake and earn Icosa with.
Sure.
So many people will burn so much Hedron, the value will go up, and then that's when, more of the borrowing will start taking place against their HSIs. So I'm holding off mint in the hopes of one day seeing the AMR bonus getting triggered. There's the ratio between borrowed Hedron and liquid Hedron. So when that ratio goes over, so say there's more borrowed Hedron as opposed to liquid Hedron, there's a bonus triggered called the advanced mint ratio bonus that gets triggered as an incentive to get people to mint more Hedron and put it on the market for those who have borrowed against their HSIs in order to purchase more Hedron on the market to pay back those borrows.
Right, but so I guess that's my question, because I was gonna do exactly what you're doing right now. Like I wasn't gonna mint anything until my stake ends, right? Until I had to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if there's no real benefit in having it there,
Exactly.
it's not like I want to sell it. I want to stake it.
Yeah.
I want it to work for me. I don't want to dump it. That's why, if I wanted to dump it, I would have done that from the get-go, right?
Your opinion right now that you're giving is a lot of people's opinions. I'm the edge case. Me personally, I'm the edge case who's doing what I just described. You are the vast majority of the cases who people have ran the scenario through their head to where they've just decided to mint their Hedron and stake it. I'm the edge case.
It's just that I don't see the benefit unless there's some. That's why I'm in here asking, right? This is because I don't. What's the benefit in just keeping it there? Because as of right now, it's not really doing anything other than accruing more Hedron, and I will continue to accrue more Hedron regardless because my stake's still going, right?
Yeah. The other simple reason I look at it, besides from hopes of the AMR bonus, is that at the end of because all my stakes are super long. Like my first hex stake doesn't come out till May 2024, right? So it's like I'm looking at that end stake day as a kind of like a big payday to where I'll delay the gratification from minting my Hedron that long. To where that day of my stake ends, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna mint my Hedron. It's gonna be all of those days served, and then I'll end my actual hex stake. So it's kind of like a double whammy, So
the AMR bonus only applies to what you haven't minted at the end of your stake. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not technically at the end of your stake. It's whenever the AMR gets triggered. So say I haven't minted at all from a native stake, and then the AMR bonus gets triggered. All of those days previous, that's when it'll get minted.
The bonus is applied to everything you have not minted. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay, I get it now.
So there is the benefit then of waiting in case that happens.
There is that case, yeah.
That's edge
But from
case.
now, so in his case, in Thor's case, I know it well because he asked me the question. I brought him here to answer, and his stake ends pretty soon. So
a few
between
of them.
now and the end of the year, I don't think that AMR bonus will be happening. I don't know. You guys go ahead and speak on that.
Oh fuck no, I don't think so at all. Shit, no.
Yeah.
Well, that's
If you mint like today and then throw it in your Hedron into the staking pool, and then you go through another 30 days without minting, then you got another 30 days of unminted Hedron, which means that'll effectively be affected by the AMR if it did trigger. So I mean, just because you mint it doesn't mean you're technically shooting yourself completely in the foot. It just means that you have to wait again to be able to build up that capability of being able to extract the yield if the AMR bonus was to happen again.
So, Executioner, was the AMR bonus developed to give users an incentive not to mint, or was it developed to safeguard the system for a scenario where there is not enough Hedron on the market in order to pay back any said loans?
Yes, in a certain way, both of them. But mostly, for the most part, it was a safeguard. For the most part, a safeguard to allow for people to have available liquid funds to be able to pay off their interests for their borrows. So that way, you aren't forced to get liquidated. I think the means of it was, in Alex's point of view, was to make it one of the hardest protocols to actually get liquidated on, but still have the availability of using the borrowing function to the best of your capabilities.